On time. And the committee will come to order. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the first meeting of the House Budget Committee for the 118th Congress. We are here to consider the new committee rules and oversight plan, but before we begin, I ask unanimous consent that the chair be authorized to declare a recess at any time. Without objection, so ordered. I'd like to recognize myself for an opening statement. Now, I don't know that I have, I'm going to recognize you for an opening statement too. I said, if it's not in my notes, I'm going to do it anyway. I'm so excited to be back on the Budget Committee, and I am profoundly honored to serve in the role as chair with the current team. I can't think of a more important committee, Mr. Boyle, than the Budget Committee. Funding the government, the people's government, to do the people's work is mission critical. Job number one. There is no defense. There is no safety net for seniors. Pick your favorite program and policy, and it doesn't exist without resources. And so this committee is critical. And it's not just about resourcing the government, it's about stewarding taxpayer dollars. It's about our view, our values, and what we expect from the people's government and what the people expect. And I know we have different views on that, and those views will be expressed, no doubt, in the various topics and debates that we have. But a budget is not just about resourcing. It is priorities, it is policy, it is values, and that's why I think this committee is so important, not to mention that it is our constitutional responsibility, the power of the purse. I hope, Mr. Boyle, that we can continue to work. You and I have worked well on Ways and Means. We've done some legislating together, and I've always respected your intellect, and I know your motives are to do well by your constituents and by our country. I want the tone of this committee going forward to be just that. I want robust debate. I want impassioned defense of the ideas that are debated. But I would hope that we would also reflect the very best of America's civility and mutual respect, and because of that expectation, I'm especially excited to work alongside of my ranking member, Mr. Boyle. I'm offended when people refer to any committee as a B committee, but especially the Budget Committee. We have an A committee level responsibility, and we have an A size challenge with our current state of fiscal affairs in this country, the runaway deficit spending, the unsustainable debt trajectory. We can debate on the strategies to address this problem that I think, if not confronted, will be one of the greatest challenges and threats and crises we've ever faced as a nation. That's how serious I see this. But it is something that will require the very best and bright. Check, check. For the record, already bipartisanship. Get a good picture here while we're. So let's debate. And, but one thing I think is not debatable, and that is the math on our deficits and our debt. I don't see this committee as just the committee responsible for putting out a budget resolution. I see this as the committee for restoring fiscal accountability to our great nation and to this institution. I know there'll be differences of opinion on how to go about that, but there can't be any debate about the path that we're on. It will end badly. And I know you've got a young family, I have a young family. The Constitution guides me, my constituents inform me, as does my conscience. But it is the future of our children that I think is at stake when it comes to our national debt. And if you think about the 120% over the size of our economy today, and the 220 as Penn Wharton projects using CBO's numbers that it will be in 30 years, we don't make it. We just don't make it if we don't intervene. I hope we can have a fiscal State of the Union. I hope we can level set on the numbers. I hope we, as members on both sides, can take those facts and figures with our own ideas of how to address it and educate the American people and sound the alarm and raise the awareness so we can bring them along in this journey, because I think people, quite frankly, are numb to the mind-numbing trillions of dollars that we're racking up. My intention is also to focus on growth. You and I have talked about this. When we were last in this level of indebtedness as a nation, it was after World War II. And the way we got out of it to a more sustainable and responsible level of debt to GDP was we reduced spending and we grew the economy. And that is the same formula, albeit with greater challenges and stiffer headwinds. But we in the 50s and 60s, we were growing the economy at over 4%. In the 70s and 80s, it was 3%. And now, the last decade, we've been under 2%. We can do better. We have to do better, because growth is a critical component of getting out of this mess and leaving our country and our fiscal affairs for our children better than we found it. So, Mr. Boyle, I'd like to recognize, if I may, the Republican members, and then I'll ask you to introduce our colleagues, Democrat colleagues. Ralph Norman from the great Palmetto State, South Carolina. Tom McClintock, who is no stranger to the issues around budget and fiscal policies, from California. Glenn Grothman, another veteran of the Budget Committee. My friend Lloyd Smucker, who was, I think, chair of the Senate Finance and Budget there in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Dr. Michael Burgess. Is Dr. Michael Burgess here? Okay, my colleague from Texas. I'll have to get on to him about his tardiness later. Buddy Carter. Ben Klein from Virginia. We've got several appropriators on the committee. Bob Good from Virginia. Jack Bergman, my classmate, president of the class of the 115th Congress from Michigan. Drew Ferguson, the former chief deputy whip. This is an all-star cast, by the way. We were serious about this. I hope y'all are as serious about it. My colleague from Texas, Chip Roy. Blake Moore from Utah, who wanted to stay on this committee and do the good work that we'll be doing over the course of this Congress. David Valadeo from California, Ron Estes from Kansas, Lisa McLean, our conference secretary from Michigan, Michelle Fishbach from Minnesota, Stephanie Bice from Oklahoma, Rudy Yakum from Indiana, Josh Burkeen from Oklahoma, and Chuck Edwards, business guy out of North Carolina. Honored to have you all on the committee. Congratulations, and I'm looking forward to serving with you. And Mr. Boyle, I'll turn it over to you.
Reclaiming my microphone. Well, thank you, Jody. And first, let me say congratulations to you, my friend. I am thrilled for you personally. I just want to say, I'm sure we're going to have intense debates in here and different principled views in terms of the role of government, and diagnosing what our challenges may be and what the solutions to them may be. But we should take a moment and just reflect how fortunate each of us are to be elected as members of Congress and to serve on the Budget Committee. Just look around at the portraits in this room and some of the people who have been known both in front of us and behind us, who make a real contribution in American history over the course of the last 4 to 5 decades. And it says something about America that the son of a tractor salesman from West Texas can rise to become chairman of such an important committee. So congratulations, Jody. Let me also say that something that Jody and I have, Chairman and I have talked about previously, a couple things kind of stylistically. The first is, I'll just speak for myself. I have served on committees in which the political food fight was all over the place and it was rampant. Now, look, I don't back down from a fight. I am, after all, a Philly sports fan. But that said, when the partisanship is at an 11 on a scale of 1 to 10, I think it just looks ugly to the American people. I really don't think either side is winning, by the way, when that happens. And nothing actually is being achieved. I have also served on committees, by the way, and I would cite 2 of them. Foreign Affairs, when I first came here, and most recently with Jody on Ways and Means, in which the chair and ranking member respectively set a tone that really was followed in the committee. I give credit, they're both no longer in Congress now, Ed Royce and Elliot Engel. When they were chair and ranking member of Foreign Affairs, they set a tone of mutual respect and collegiality that absolutely influenced the culture of that committee and made it a very pleasant place to show up and do constructive work. That is my sincere goal, and I believe we will be able to achieve it. And yeah, look, we have principled disagreements. That's fine. That's the way our system was set up in my district, by the way, by Mr. Madison and Hamilton and others of our founders. That's legitimate. But when it engages into the nonsense, that's where a line is crossed. And I hope and believe that we will set a tone that is such that people will look at this committee in a way when we're done that perhaps is let's just say that we can raise the bar to the highest level possible. I also just want to say, in terms of addressing the chair's comments on debt, I get where he's coming from. And I'm an intellectually curious person, open-minded, and I understand how the $31 trillion figure can be scary to folks. That sounds like a big number. Heck, to me, $1 million sounds like a big number. But I also point out there have been different points in recent American history where I heard a lot of the same rhetoric. I think back to the early 1990s. 1990, 1991, there were projections on an unsustainable deficit, an unsustainable debt. It was doom and gloom all over the place. By the late 90s, in part because of decisions that were made on a bipartisan basis by presidents of both parties, and Congress is controlled by both parties, but also in large part due to remarkable economic growth. The debate by the end of that decade was not, oh my God, how are we going to be able to sustain this deficit? The debate was actually whether or not the full deficit should be paid off and what we were going to do with all these surpluses. So let's be mindful of what Mark Twain once said, that predictions are hard to make, especially about the future. Now, I also want to make a point about the last couple of years. I personally, and I think members on this side of the aisle, will not be shy about defending the remarkable economic record of the last 2 years. And something as Americans we should all be proud of. No country on earth has come out of the pandemic economically stronger than the United States of America. That's not subjective. When you're looking in terms of GDP growth, record job growth, which has produced an unemployment rate at its lowest level since 1969, when you also look at it even in terms of the very difficult issue of inflation, we know that coming out of the pandemic, every country on earth has had to deal with runaway inflation. Well, it turns out over the last 6 months, inflation has dropped more in the United States than all of our peer countries. We're seeing countries in the Eurozone, especially in the UK, don't worry, there is no weather alert for the Washington, D.C. area. We're looking pretty good, I think. So before I introduce my members, I would just point out this, that when you look at where the United States economy is now versus all of our peer countries, you would rather be the United States than any other country. That did not happen by accident. Now, Mr. Chairman, I'm going to go ahead and likewise introduce the Democratic members. And by the way, I'm happy to report to you that we had more members seeking to be on the committee than there were spots available. And I think that is a great sign. First, we have two new members. We mostly have returning members. We have two new members to the committee, Representative Becca Ballant of Vermont, there we go, as well as Representative David Trone of nearby Maryland. In terms of returning members, we have Brian Higgins of Buffalo, New York, Jan Schakowsky of Illinois, Earl Blumenauer of Oregon, Dan Kildee, I think he's from Flint, Michigan. I can't recall. He might mention that once or twice. Scott Peters of California, Barbara Lee of California, Lloyd Doggett of Texas, Jennifer Wexton of Virginia, Sheila Jackson Lee of Texas, Ilhan Omar of Minnesota, Bobby Scott of Virginia, and last but certainly not least, Jimmy Panetta of California. It's an honor to be serving with you. Very excited to have you on the committee. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I'll yield back.
Thank the ranking member. And I look forward, today is really housekeeping and logistics. We will dig into policies, numbers, process, and we'll let the debate begin. But again, humbled to be here, grateful to serve alongside of you. Congratulations to my Democrat colleagues, my friend Dan Kildee, and my other Ways and Means friends, Mr. Higgins and Panetta. Excited you guys are here as well. Let's see here. In the interest of time, if any other member has opening statements, I ask that you submit them for the record. Today, we meet to consider the committee's rules of procedures and the committee's oversight plan. The proposed rules and oversight plan have been shared with all members of the committee. My understanding is that the minority has no objections to the rules and oversight plan. The committee's rules set out its procedures, which must be consistent with House rules. The committee's oversight plan outlines proposed activities for this Congress. We will now proceed to consider the committee's rules for adoption. These rules are essentially the same rules as the committee has operated under in the past under both Democrat and Republican majorities. There are a few technical changes intended to conform our committee rules with rules of the House. If there are any questions, I can ask the staff to briefly review the changes to the rules. If not, at this time, I'd like to recognize the gentleman from Pennsylvania, Mr. Smucker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I ask unanimous consent that the markup document is considered read and open for amendment.
Without objection, the request is agreed to.
Mr. Chairman, I'm not sure if it would be appropriate at this point, but I just want to and we already, I know our staff, respective staff directors already spoke about this. We have no objection to the rules. I would just ask for your assurance that, as we are now are returning and have basically returned to normal after god-awful pandemic that I hope none of us ever have to live through again. Coming out of that experience, I think a lot of businesses and organizations have learned things about technology that they maybe didn't know previously, and how best we can incorporate that into a new normal. One feature of the last couple of years that I appreciated, and I think actually improved our work, was the ability to have virtual witnesses, not as a substitute for in-person witnesses. But the one challenge when we always have in-person witnesses is we get the same folks from Washington, D.C., and I have a feeling that knowing you might be inclined to see the value that if occasion, by virtue of technology, we can have witnesses testify. We're from Texas, we're from Minnesota, we're from California, maybe some folks for whom coming here would be an economic hardship. Allowing them to testify virtually would be a way that we can benefit from their knowledge and listen to them, but at the same time, they could participate in the process. So I would just ask you to be open to that case-by-case basis when the need arises.
Whatever we need to do to bring ideas and perspectives outside of this town, I'm going to avail myself of. But I appreciate that. And with respect to the comments from Mr. Smucker, without objection, his request is agreed to. The committee will now proceed to the consideration of the committee rules package. My understanding is that we have no amendments, so I would like to move to the adoption of the rules. I now recognize the gentleman from Pennsylvania, Mr. Smucker, for the purpose of offering the necessary motions to adopt the rules package.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the committee adopt the chairman's mark as the rules of the Committee on the Budget for the 118th Congress.
Thank you, Mr. Smucker. The questions on the motion offered by the gentleman from Pennsylvania, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. The rules package is adopted. I'd like to make an announcement at this time because it is required by House rules. The committee rules contain a provision of long-discussed practice for holding regular meetings on the second Wednesday of each month. Don't know why that continues to be in these, but the committee is notified pursuant to Committee Rule 3 that all regular meetings for the 118th Congress are canceled. Members will be notified for additional and special meetings, as is our customary practice. Committee will now consider the oversight plan of the 118th Congress. Under both House and committee rules, the Budget Committee is required to adopt an oversight plan by March 1st. The plan before the committee is shared with the minority staff, summarized the areas in which the Budget Committee has oversight. These include, not limited to, the budget resolution, establishment and enforcement of special controls over the federal budget, the oversight and agencies involved in budget execution and enforcement, and budget process reform. The plan also states that the committee will exercise its oversight responsibility over the Congressional Budget Office. Under House rules, committees are required to include a schedule for reauthorizing unauthorized or permanently authorized programs and agencies. CBO is the only agency fully under the committee's jurisdiction, and it operates under a permanent and indefinite authorization. That may need to be changed, quite frankly, and that'll be something we'll dig into together in terms of CBO, how they function, and whether they should be permanently authorized. Over the next several weeks, the committee will hold a series of hearings on important budget-related matters, very similar to what this committee traditionally does. I would like to emphasize that this schedule is not binding, therefore does not preclude the committee from holding hearings on other topics as needed and as needs arise or circumstances change. My understanding is that there will be no amendments. Mr. Ferguson.
Mr. Chairman, I ask unanimous consent that the oversight plan is considered read.
Thank the gentleman from Georgia. Without objection, the oversight plan is considered as read. I will recognize the gentleman from Georgia, again, Mr. Ferguson, for the purpose of offering the necessary motion to adopt the oversight plan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that the committee adopt the chairman's mark as the oversight plan for the Committee on the Budget for the 118th Congress.
Questions on the motion offered by the gentleman from Georgia? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. Opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. The oversight plan is adopted. I ask unanimous consent that the committee be authorized to issue and print copies of compilations of laws and rules relating to the Congressional Budget Office without objection. So ordered. Recognize the gentleman from Indiana, Mr. Yakum.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and congratulations to you as well as the ranking member. I ask unanimous consent that the staff be authorized to make technical, conforming, or stylistic changes to the committee rules and oversight plan. The chairman be authorized to submit the rules for printing in the congressional record within 30 days, and that the chairman be authorized to submit the oversight plan to the committees on House Administration and Oversight and Accountability.
Without objection, so ordered. Before we conclude today's business, I'd like to take a minute to recognize the senior staff. And I know you have your senior staff supporting our colleagues on the other side of the aisle, so I'd like to also give you the opportunity to introduce your colleagues. Gary Andres came from, most recently from Ways and Means as staff director. He was staff director also for ENC, and no stranger to this institution, great guy, and a very effective leader, and I'm excited to have him on the team. He brings with him Paige Decker, was his deputy over at Ways and Means, so I know y'all are familiar with, many of you are familiar with them. And Sarah Flame, she was the communications director at the Appropriations Committee. Proud that she's joined us. Alec Davis also from Appropriations has come over. Eric Davis and Colin Hayes, all senior policy advisors. Brad Watson, Director of Budget Review. Mary Papaduke, our general counsel. That's an A team for you. That's the Ways and Means is junior varsity now. This is varsity.
Mr. Chairman, I couldn't agree more. Continuing with the A team on the House Budget Democratic side, a veteran crew that is led by now new as of the last 6 weeks or so, Staff Director Greg Waring, who's been with the committee for quite some time. Deputy Staff Director Erica Appel. Behind me, we have Senior Counsel Jocelyn Harris, as well as Senior Counsel Sam Weiss. The numbers folks, Kimberly Overbeek and Jennifer Wheelock. Member Services, Gianluca Nigro. Our analysts, Kate Fink, Sarah Lee, Layla Moken, and Laura Santos. And then our comms team, Allie Bell, who's from the Philadelphia area as well, Naomi Savin, and Jacob Hicks. Just a great and experienced team, and a pleasure to be working with them.
Excellent. Well, congratulations, and again, looking forward to serving with you all. We have assembled a great team together, and I'm excited for the work ahead. Folks, this concludes the items of business on the agenda for what is still referred to as the House Budget Committee, but I'm going to call it the Committee on Restoring Fiscal Accountability to this institution and to our great nation. So with that, the committee stands adjourned.